Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of JavaScript Jabber this week. Looks like I am the host this week. We usually have a few people, but Steve had something come up. I think Dan might be traveling. And so it's me today, Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs, and I have a special guest. This is Sagi Carmel, coming to us from the other side of the world. Sagi, do you want to let people know who you are? Where they might have heard of you?
Sure, no problem. My name is Sagi. I'm 30 years old. I started developing since 7th grade and then never stopped. I did 13th grade, which is a funny thing that you have in Israel. You can have a specific 13th grade about only development. And then I worked for the IDF, and in the IDF I did programming as well. Worked on some small startup companies, and then now I'm starting again one of my own after being in a startup company again, while trying a variety of technologies. And generally people would know me from either conferences, small conferences, or meetups that I'm usually trying to attend or attending in Israel, and also slightly on YouTube and some other social media platforms.
Cool. Okay. So today we're talking about Astro, and I know we've talked about it before, but I think it's been a while. Are there things that are new in Astro, or?
So inherently server actions, just like Next.js, which is a new feature that was added to Astro fairly recently. I don't like using it, but one of the features that is fairly new and I'm using it quite often is the way that environment variables are passed to Astro. It now allows for you can go to the astroconfig.js or NJS and then write your environment variables over there and assigning it right there. Now, it's a secret, it's a client or server side. And then after running a small sync, you can import those directly to the code without doing process.env or import.meta, which allows to a fairly structured side of code. And if it doesn't exist, it just pops an error, which is amazing.
Gotcha. So, yeah, maybe we should just get into the fundamentals here real quick and just talk about what Astro is and what the difference is between that and maybe some of the other things that people have used.
All right. So Astro.js is a server-side rendering framework, just like Next.js, Remix, Nuxt, or what was that? Nuxt and what else? And SvelteKit. So all those frameworks are flavored to a certain type of front-end library. So it's either you get Remix for React, Next.js for React, and you might get Nuxt for Vue, and SvelteKit for Svelte. With Astro.js, it's like a server-side agnostic framework, which will allow you to incorporate any kind of client-side library into it and make components that could be rendered in the server or in the client. So if you feel very creative, you can take your team and just say, okay, let's just figure out which front-end library we like the most, and even develop multiple components in multiple different libraries and see what works for you. So that's a really cool thing about Astro.js. It allows you this freedom. I don't recommend having multiple components in the same multiple front-end frameworks in the same project, but it's sure fun if you're trying to figure out with your team. So it allows it, and it's amazing.
So I guess one thing that I'm wondering, just diving into this, right? Because I've played a little bit with Next. I've done some stuff with some of the others as well. They kind of have this cohesive idea where everything. I haven't used Next.js since they did server-side components, so I don't know how that all plays, but
what do you use? Actually, I'm curious. What do you use? What if you need to run it?
So my full-time job, I work in Ruby. Actually, so I tend to reach for a Jekyll or something like that for my server-side stuff, and then if I need client-side stuff, then I'll just import something into the front end. But a lot of times I'm doing Rails, and so it does a back end process and a front end process, and they're different because the back end's Rails and the front end's something else. A lot of times that's hotwire stimulus, but yeah, when I'm fiddling with something like a Next.js, they kind of have a cohesive way of managing stuff, right? Where it's like, hey, you kind of do it the Next.js way and it just kind of works. And it sounds like Astro, the way that it works, and if I remember right, they've got islands, and so you can say this island does this and this island does that, and so you can kind of mix and match. So are there best practices for Astro kind of above and beyond the isolate your pieces, or?
Generally not, but that simplicity is what makes it beautiful. So
okay.
let me give you an example. So in Next.js, where you could have rendered server-side component inside client component, inside server components, inside client components, that makes this entire ordeal of tracking what everything in what each file is doing is very complicated, very complected. So complected is like just like inside each other. It's very not understandable. Well, in
I've heard that complaint from React developers just in general is, you start mixing your server components with your front end components, and it's not always straightforward what's going to do what.
This is very, very common, and one of the issues that it suffers from, though, for those who did use Next.js, are normally like using server actions and then try to revalidate the information. For front end, it needs to be pretty. It needs to be beautiful. And most of the issues about revalidation that it just doing the hydration in its own way. So hydration that is done using Next.js with the revalidation from the server-side rendering component must do like a full like swap of the page, but it doesn't let you opt in about how you should do it unless you're doing partial pages rendering. So it's very convoluted, and there are many ways. If you ever saw the docs, if you ever seen the docs, those docs are amazing, but like they contain a lot of information for nested routes and grouping routes and to have partial rendering. And in Astro, it's just like very simple. Just like if you want to opt out and let the server component like wait a bit and finish and then hydrate, you just write server:defer on the component. And then what it does that it just hold the request and just keep this spot with any loading component that you choose. And then when it's ready, it just swaps it back. But it's just doing it for this specific island. So it's very simple and it's amazing. And the fact that you're just staying in the JavaScript ecosystem allows you to also pass and split code accordingly. So, okay, if you don't mind me, I'm just hijacking this line of question is for something.
No, you're fine. But let me just make sure that I understand it. So essentially what you're saying is that if I have a server component that, I need to wait for it to, do something or render something or things like that, Astro gives me a way of kind of controlling the hydration and rendering cycle so that I don't get lost in kind of the middle of this is a web front end component that has a server component that has another thing. And so, I can tell it, hey, just render when you're done, or, hey, you're I want you to manage the life cycle in this way.
That's very correct. And I only talked about server:defer, which is allowing to server components to be rendered later. But you can also have client load that is being loaded with criterias. For example, for those who use native HTML, they might be aware that you can load CSS based on the width of the screen. So it's a media query that allows you to load styles based on the screen to, just saves like resources. You can also do the same thing with Astro and components that are rendered in the client side. So we just talked about server:defer for server components, but client components also have their own like ecosystem and support that works amazing behind the scene and just works. And it's clear when it's made. It's not the responsibility of the component to decide whether or not it's a server or a client. It's whoever calls it makes the decision. And to me, just like under all logical reasoning, it just makes sense, just like I get it.
So So I guess the other question that I have is what problems does this solve other than just, kind of knowing, what's doing what and when and how and why. It's one thing to talk about kind of the nitty gritty of, okay, this is going to render at this time in this way and things like that. But, ultimately, usually what we're talking about is user experience, right? And so the reason I do any of this stuff is because it either makes my life easier to keep track of what's going on, or it makes the user experience easier. So does this solve one problem more than the other?
You're talking about the developer experience or the user experience? For this specific instance, it sounds like you're talking about the developer experience.
It could be either one. I guess what I'm saying is sometimes you do this for user experience, right? Where it's like, hey, we just render the whole thing when it's done, instead of, hey, you kind of sort of rendered, but you're still waiting on this other thing to render, and then it finally renders, and then, okay, it's still, waiting for something else, or there's something else, in another component that's going to, it's going to hook into this component and change things. And so, it sounds like what Astro's doing is giving you a good way to manage a lot of that life cycle and that work, that flow, whether it's data or visual components or other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of that a lot of times is just down to, it's nice for the user if it just kind of loads all at once or loads in the right way or things like that. And for some of this, though, when you're talking about, hey, you've got nested server components and front end components, some of that, it sounds like it just makes it easier for the developer to track and debug when things are working. So I guess what I'm driving at is where do the benefits usually come in? Is it more a developer experience thing, or is it more of a user experience? And when do you start making the decision to make these trade-offs?
So I'll break it down from the beginning. Astro is mainly, surprisingly enough, the initial intention of Astro to be a content-driven framework. So whenever you're creating blogs, this should be, and I'm not like, I'm obviously biased here, but I'm saying it to everyone. If you ever wanted to create a blog, Astro.js just provides the best integrations and the best things to get the blog going. And it's just server-side components with pages and routing. Since most of it will be translated to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, if you're doing client-side, some client-side, then this is your go-to framework. And what makes it so great is obviously that if you don't need the server-side rendering, you want to create static apps, it will just do it. So that's the first thing that you want to think about when you're trying to choose Astro. Let's just say, but you want to create a more complex application with like auth and logins and so on. You need server-side rendering. So in this instance, the reason where Astro shines is both its usages of is integration from the developer experience using CSS, and obviously its speed working to using the turbo engine behind the scenes. So it just works amazingly, and like many benchmarks has been done to compare between many frameworks, and Astro just tends to come on top. It's just because it's so fast, both on build time and on obviously showing it, because it's then translate all the code into native Node.js code. It obviously has its own functionality behind it. So it allows you to both have an amazing developer experience and an amazing user experience. The issue where it lacks is currently popularity. It doesn't lack community. It just lacks popularity. So the difference between the two is just like, I can go into Discord. There is an AI bot that helps me, and a vibrant community that helps me with whatever I need. I'm asking there, usually get a response 10 live from a person, or a few seconds using AI. And that's like where usually it lacks. So this is one of the disadvantages of why Astro is like, maybe you're thinking about it, you're not sure, but it's like Astro.js is kind of lacking on popularity. So when a person comes to me and says, well, I don't know what Astro is, so they most likely won't pick it because they don't know it.
Right.
But after they do, it's like I never looked back after choosing Astro for my projects.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's say that I want to get started with Astro. Then it's like, okay, you know what? Sagi, he's smart. He convinced me. He, I'm going to go do this, right? So where do I go from there?
So the Astro documentation is an amazing place to start. Normally speaking, that will just tell you, look, you need to have like a PNPM or NPM and just run the CLI just like you're starting Vite as a project or you're starting Next.js. They have their own CLI. Just starting a project, they ask you what template do you want? Like, is it a blog? Is it a server-side rendering? Like, you just start from there. It just plops out a template with a basic Astro website. You sort of fiddling around. It's just like, oh, it's very clear. This component has this logic. It looks like this, and it has its own styling, and it's clear. But that's where you start, right? And then you can move forward to whatever your project needs. If you want to move to a more interaction-oriented websites, then you go on and install the integration with React, Vue, or Svelte. Or even not even just that, you have Quick, you have Solid, you have like you have everything, and then like the world is your oyster.
Right. So I guess the other thing that I'm wondering then as we dive in is how does Astro then interact with React or Vue or whatever, right?
I don't know how they created their adapter, but essentially you're downloading the React package, but you're also downloading an adapter for Astro.js. And just like Vite, where you can assign integrations to a project, like Tailwind CSS Forever used React with Tailwind, knows that the Vite configuration needs to get Tailwind CSS, which Astro also supports. And then like it does the same thing for React, and then you just treat it like a React app. But once you need to use it in an Astro component, because you probably will have to, then you need to either decide if it's a client component or a server component, and then you add the client load directive, which tells it this components now need to have the client-side interactivity.
Okay, that makes sense. So, this goes back to what you were talking about before, where now it's working with lifecycle and all of the other pieces. You have an adapter there that manages all that, and so it's not just kind of this, hey, here's a wrapper and we're gonna do black magic to make it work. It actually it knows about React and it knows how React works, and so at the end of the day, in that island, it says, okay, then this is the way that I'm going to hook in and manage React and allow React to do its work.
Exactly, you got it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So
it does, right? It does. It should be that simple.
So I guess the other question I have is, I hear some people basically say, well, I like Astro because it lets me use more than one framework. And that sounds like a headache to me, to be honest.
No, that's a bad argument. That's generally a bad argument.
Now I have to learn 2 frameworks plus how Astro works. And I guess the flip side of the argument is, well, if I use Next.js, then I only have to really know React plus whatever Next adds. So when should I be reaching for the, hey, I've got a lower learning curve in Next.js versus I've got, whatever niceties that Astro gives me versus, hey, I've kind of got sources from all kinds of stuff. And so I have some Angular stuff and some React stuff. And so I'm going to.
Okay. So first of all,
when do you make that decision?
So normally speaking, people would, I'll separate between those who knows React and those who don't know React, because there is a small distinction needs to be made. So if you know React, knowing Next.js is pretty simple. The only thing you need to take control on is when it's a server component, or what you can and can't do within a server component, and when it's a client component and what you can and can't do in a client component. We start from that. The second thing is, if you know React, the Astro writing style very similar to how you write in React. It's a JSX style, but it's not exactly JSX, and I'll explain the distinction. So in JSX, because it's a React framework, it's used to based on React, and React used to be a front-end library. So if you wanted to write, for example, class, which is the HTML directive for a class in CSS, then you would write class name. The reason behind this is because, you cannot write the keyword, class, and React.
Class is a keyword in JavaScript, so you can't use it both ways.
It's a keyword in JavaScript. Opted out for class name. But in Astro, you can write class. And the reason is because it's server-side component. It renders in the server. And you're writing, like, it's very similar. It's a better version of JSX because you can write class, but you're getting a raw HTML output from that. Understand? It just doesn't do any interpolation. However, if you want to do like, let's just say, map between an information to a components using HTML, what that you normally do is you would treat it like React, but you won't write a key equals to I or something because, again, you're not running it in the client. It's JavaScript that runs in the server. So this is the first separation. So if you know React, knowing how Astro works is just amazing. You just need to get used to the concept that Astro components are server-side rendered and should mostly, I never create a client-side server, a client-side component for Astro, but Astro components should normally and always be server-side. So you don't write. So for whoever used to write on-click on components, now it doesn't work with Astro components because they intended to be on server-side. Now those who knows React is amazing. If you don't know React, generally still using Astro and understanding of JSX components, it's still simple knowing JSX. It's not the React framework. You're learning to write code that maps to HTML in the end. Even if you don't know the JSX style, you can still map code that renders to HTML in the end using the HTML template, the basic HTML template. And again, it should be very clear of how you're doing it. So that answers both of those questions. So if you do or you don't, just at least try. And I'm pretty sure that you would like using it without the JSX syntax if you're not familiar with it, or with the JSX syntax if you are familiar with it.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm getting the picture here. So what kinds of things do people build with Astro? Or what kinds of things should people reach for Astro over something like Next.js?
So again, I use Astro is my Swiss Army knife. So just like it creates everything from logs to more interactive websites. And I didn't see any reasons why to use Next.js more than I would like to use Astro. The main issues that I have with Next.js is that you're vendor locked, which is one of the most complaints that I hear about Next.js. It's just like you're locked to using Vercel to fully enjoy all the capabilities of Next.js, which just feels like a cheap move against developers. Give me a framework that is open source and allows me to do whatever I want. Why do I need to be vendor locked? And I don't really see a reason why not to use Next.js unless you have a really complex, insanely complex website, and the scale might be something that Astro won't reach, though I think it would reach. I really don't see a reason why not to use Astro versus Next.js.
Okay. It sounds like they kind of operate in a lot of the same space, right? They give you solutions to a lot of the same problems. So what have you built with Astro then?
So I've created the census for the CBS. So census is, for whoever doesn't know, so census is like a way that you can gather information about population or everything that the government wants the people to know. You get a growth rate of population within regions or whatever. So I've created the website that does it within Israel, which is census CBS Gov.il. For whoever is outside of Israel won't be able to get it. You probably will need a VPN, but this is the website that I've created. It's very static, and most of its interactivity was done using CSS, which is another topic that I haven't really talked about, but it's really important for understanding why server-side is slightly superior than client-side. And we'll get to it. But so I created this website, which is mostly server-side interactivity with the smidge of client-side that I've gotten from connecting the graphs using Looker, which is a Google product with BigQuery.
Right. So
That's why.
So this is the official census site for Israel.
This is the official Gov census. The CBS, it's like the Census Bureau Statistic, CBS, something like that.
Right. So you said, I want to dig into this. You said that a lot of the animation was done with CSS.
Yes.
And that was important for how you're using Astro.
Yes.
So you want to explain that?
So yes, I would love that. I love it. So in CSS, normally people from a backend experience tend to underestimate the CSS, but CSS gives you a lot of power to do many of what front end libraries gives to you, but it does it for free. So we'll start from animations. Animations you pretty much get for free.
Hang on, I'm going to back you up for just a second, because it doesn't do it for free, but you don't have to write code. You don't have to write as much code in JavaScript.
What do you mean it doesn't do it for free?
So CSS has it built in, right? And so you usually have some style, and some of the style is animate for this long in this way.
Yes.
But see that I think what you mean by for free is that beyond that, you don't really have to do any extra work, right? You don't have to write out the animation in JavaScript. You don't have to tell it how to do the transition or anything like that. All of that stuff's just built into your CSS.
Yeah.
And the other part of for free is that the CSS is really, really highly optimized to just work without a lot of computing overhead. Yes. Whereas doing it in JavaScript is, I mean, I've seen stuff done in JavaScript that doesn't cost you a lot in your computing resources, but the CSS is already optimized and does it way more efficiently.
Yes. So
I just don't want people thinking, well, it's just, automatic. It feels that way in some ways, but yeah.
I get it. So I'll elaborate. So what I'm saying for free in this instance is, what I'm saying is that I'll be explicit about this. So most of the animations needed most of them, not all of them, but most of the animation needed to be created are very simple, like a hover, like a click, like a target, like a or like shaders, like shading behind an element, so on and so forth. Most of these animations, including scaling, it's just like you get it for CSS. And what I mean now for free, it's just like it's easy, it's clear, and like you once you get into it, you pretty much gather like most of the animation needed. Now, sometimes if you need something more complex, like let's just say confetti, or you want to have like a more like 3D animations, whatever, then normally writing it in CSS, though is possible, is not really reasonable. Then you opt out to JavaScript. And why I'm recommending CSS within Astro, because there are front end. I'm sorry about it, but there are 7 ways to load CSS into front end, which is external styling, global styling, module styling, Tailwind, or any other one of those, Tailwind. And you have like, what was it? Was it 7? And in Astro, you would probably mostly use 1, which is scoped styling. So scoped styling, essentially when you create an Astro component, it allows you to create the styling which is being used only for that component. So let's just say I have a class named button. So this class that I've created for the button will only be used for that button. And if I have a class different that does something different, it's just like it's completely separate, and it behaves like it looks whatever you've decided to be looked. So that's what I'm saying with CSS. And now that you have more advanced selectors, like for example the has selector, which is incredibly popular, and thank God it was created. You would also have the starting style. Do you know, by the way, for those who doesn't know, starting style is a new CSS, I would say, I forgot what's the name, it's a query. So when a component is being rendered to the screen, it creates the animation from the start of it. So for example, if you're hiding something and you're showing it using a display, it would just show up. It will just show up constantly. And what I'm saying is it's being done for free. It's just like people you would have used like a bunch of JavaScript to make the animation happens when it's being loaded, but now you get it for free using CSS, and you don't have to worry about this. This is what essentially what I mean.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've got the scope styling, and that's the power that you're getting as far as CSS goes from your from using Astro, right? Because then you can say, hey, stuff in here animates this way. Stuff in here's hover states react in this way, and I can have that same kind of thing. I didn't like your button example because usually you want all your buttons to look more or less the same. But
yeah, so okay, well, button is not a good example.
A lot of your other, what you're talking about here is okay. Maybe I have a menu component, and so the drop downs or whatever, right? If I hover there, the hover states are going to be unique to that component. But then if I have, I don't know, a graph or a chart, and I hover over a particular data point, then that's going to show things up differently, right? It might give me the numbers and a little box and things like that, but I don't want it to pop in the same way that the menu does. And so, I can set the specific hover states, and sure, you can do that by, giving it a class and then, doing a bunch of other wrangling. But if you've got it scoped to just that component, and that, okay, any chart component's going to have hover states and animation states and click states this way, then that you've got everything kind of set up that way, and you don't have to worry about, okay, is this going to bleed over to something else, because it's all scoped to just that kind of a component.
Amazing, you got it.
Yeah, that's cool. I think I've seen this in other frameworks, but
you have it in Vue.
They wind up doing some of the other CSS magic to make it work.
Yeah. And I'm happy that Astro has it. It also has some cheat sheets, which with some shortcuts. So, for example, if you're creating a class, normally in order to create a class and condition whether or not a class would exist on a component, let's just say we're talking about only server-side rendering and not talking about client-side, you would have to be doing string interpolation over the class. Usually we would have a class which is class A, class B, class C, and you have space between them, right? When you're using Astro, there is something that is called class list, which allows you to pass on an array which is containing all the name, and allows you to condition whether or not a name of a class would exist, whether or not if you condition it, we'll just say active : something that is Boolean, and if it's true, it would be inserted as a name of a class, and if it isn't, it will just disappear. And it's just it's a nice shortcut for managing your components.
Yeah, I've seen that in some of the things that I've gotten HTML templates that have Astro in them, and I've seen those directives. So
amazing. The next thing what that'll be interesting about is also the specific one that I've created. I also use HTMX. Now, I'm not sure if it's within the scope of this conversation, but if you're curious to hear about this and why did I use HTMX, I'll be more than happy to talk about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is interesting. We've had Carson Gross on the podcast talking about HTMX, nice. And it's a tool, or it's almost a pattern. Anyway, but it's a really handy way of managing a lot of your state and things like that. And it seems like with Astro, it would play pretty nicely because, again, you've got these pockets of functionality, right, that you're managing as islands. And so HTMX, it doesn't think of it quite that way, but I could see how you can make a mesh.
Yes. So about the integration between HTMX and Astro, I pretty much nailed it. The difference is that HTMX would normally need you to return an HTML template, which you can create using Astro. You can create the HTML template and just return them. So, and then it will just swap them directly into the client to whatever side that you need. And so you don't even need the client side library for the simplistic stuff, because you would have HTMX doing all the swapping together with Astro. So Astro will hold the state using the database and would render the HTML, and HTMX will just swap it where it's needed based on the interaction.
Yeah, we do something similar with Rails and Turbo.
It's amazing.
And so, yeah, and it's the same idea, right? It's like, hey, replace or insert after, insert before, whatever, right? And you just throw some HTML back. And so Rails renders the HTML with the data from the database and, it puts it into the page based on what you're telling it, following the conventions in Turbo. And I know HTMX basically works the same way.
Exactly. And one last thing that it's important to mention and why I recommend using Astro and why it's so fun to use Astro, which is like a JavaScript for both the front and the back, which is the inherent part about code splitting. So let me give you an example. Let's just say I've created an ID for a component, right? And let's just say I've created this ID and I need this ID to be used in a server-side component and in a client-side component. Usually passing those between the client side and the server side would be, let's just say, headache, especially if you're from Ruby on Rails. Like, you know how to pass, like, let's just say I need this ID in the client side, whatever. It's just like an issue because those are two completely different languages. But in Astro, it's both on the same. So I create a constant IDs file. And the ID is being shared to the server side components and to the client side components. So it will duplicate it to the server and the client and just being used, and it's interlaced, and it's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I'm a little curious because I think we're kind of talking around some of the fundamentals of Astro and some of the more common use cases. Where do you get more advanced with Astro? Where do you get into features that I guess maybe aren't as simple or common, but are still powerful?
Can you give me an example?
I don't know.
What will be? Let's flip the script. What will be advanced, or what would you consider be advanced when you're writing Ruby on Rails with whatever front end framework to your front end library to your decision? What will be complex?
I mean, usually you're getting into more of, I guess, the optimization stuff, where it's, hey, I'm optimizing the way I access my database, or, maybe I have some really, really complicated behaviors. But I know people generally solve a lot of that with something like React.
Wait, you're saying that accessing the database, they're solving it using React by
really complicated interactions on the front end you handle with React.
So amazing. If you need complicated interaction, you could just opt into React and God bless you.
Yeah.
So it's just like you have it all. Like from side to side, you need the complex stuff. You can install even like front-end libraries like Material UI, ShadCN has integration with Astro.
Okay.
You get it for free. You want something with more Tailwind, you have Flowbyte. And obviously, it just works.
Makes sense. So are there optimizations you need to make on the back end as far as, database or the way you do your queries or things like that if you're pulling from a data source?
So normally it would be, I wouldn't have an issue with generally pulling information from the database because, again, you're just writing TypeScript as like backend. It's just like the difference is that, and one that I'm usually trying to tell to whomever I work with on the components, is just like not to write the exact queries within the components. So I would rather have like an entities file.
Yeah,
and that's those entities file. You manage like the functions, like the get all, create, and that, and then you call them using the Astro component. Not because I'm afraid of any sort of leakage of the information, but because because of how Astro works. Which is, some people might argue that it is the disadvantage. So the component of Astro is inherently divided to two: the logic and the template of the HTML. So you must either you return a response to return something else except the HTML template, or you let the HTML template decide on whatever it works, right? So you need to have the logic finish most of the time. You need to have the logic finish. So that means they can that early bailout, which is something. So the technique of early bailout is like, right, if and then return. This might not work. This might not work because you need to return a component. So you will write a wrapper around it. It's just like, it's very inconvenient. It's not convenient to write it within the Astro component. So that's the only like thing, which is not that bad, all things considered, but it's just like things to note that just don't write your selects and inserts and whatever within the Astro component, but just create a function and then manage it.
Yeah, that's common practice I've seen with most backend systems, right? You've segregated your logic so that your database access layer is separate from your rendering logic.
Yeah. What will be another interesting thing to talk about, which is slots. So if you don't mind me.
Go ahead.
So in React, normally you would have, in order to pass on, let's just say the JSX to the next component and to render the components, you would have children. So the children components would be whatever let's just say I've created a menu, which is a component that I've created, and then I will have like the list of whatever I need to have inside the menu. So you would have children component within the menu. The definition of the menu would have the children component.
Right.
In Astro, you would have slots, and slot is an HTML element that a lot of people don't know that exists. There is a template HTML attribute, the tag, and the slot, which are both like official. But the slot template or the slot tag allows you to insert component just like a children would. So what's the difference? Normally, the difference would be that you can give slots name. So by giving them name, you can also tell to the parent, okay, the parent can say to the kid, okay, I want this in the slot named the header. I want this in the nameless slot, which is the children, and I want this in the footer. So normally what did I do with my styling is that I would have the outer component design the entire layout, and then inject the inner components where they need to be fit. What did you get is an extremely amazing experience that that layout is outside. The father decides on the layout, and the components themselves decided on the functionality of themselves. And this is one of the things that is just very convenient, and I don't know how people manage without like Astro. Usually they pass it by the props, and it just it looks kind of ugly.
Yeah, I've seen that, and yeah, it gets a little bit hairy. I've used other component libraries that you can basically say, hey, these are the things that go in the different slots. So Ruby on Rails has a view component library that does all the server rendering, and you can give it slots, and then you can give it other components to stick in those slots.
Amazing. And view transition. Yeah. Have you ever heard of view transition?
I think I might have heard of it, but I don't know what it is, or at least I don't know what you mean by it.
The view transition is inherently essentially created using. It's a standard web thing, which allows you to move between websites without having a front-end library, and it allows you to fade between pages. So you can, if you want a client-side field to something without looking at the indicator that says that it's loading when it's trying to move between component A to component B, or between page A to page B, you can, in Astro, they give you a nice addition to it, but it's just you add the view transition, and then you want to move between page A to page B, just press on the link, and you don't get any indication from the server that it's loaded, but it will be instead faded nicely from one page to another, which is, you can do it also on Ruby on Rails. It's just it's a web thing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there are a number of, I think HTMX allows you to do something similar as well.
Yes.
Where,
it's HX Boost. It just allows you to.
Yeah. And so effectively what you're doing is it's I clicked a link to load a different page on the same website. And so it intelligently says, okay, what changed? Right. And then
there is updates. A few differences though. There's a few differences. Okay. So view transition, not only that it does also the fading between the pages, which HTMX won't unless you explicitly create animations using CSS over
Okay, so this does it with an animation.
Not only that, it also allows you to persist certain elements when you move between pages.
Okay.
So Fireship created a video about it way back, which is when you press the button, a certain element moved from the center of the page to the top left, but the URL and the page itself changed between page A to page B, and it went through the server. Right? So view transition is a slightly more advanced animation and gives you like a really client-side feel. And normally you would have to do like jump through hoops to create this animation, and you're sort of getting it for free.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because, you know, and that's the kind of UX that's nice, is that it, you know, it's like, hey, now what you had, it, you know, and now it looks like this instead of what you started with.
Exactly.
Super cool. Well, we're kind of getting a little bit toward the end of time. If people want to learn more about you or about Astro, what are the best resources out there?
I mean, I'm just trying to every once in a while upload to YouTube, maybe post on LinkedIn, but generally those two places. I'll try to be more mindful about it, but this is where I'm currently at until I become an official public speaker about Astro. I wanted to one day just talk about Astro freely and trash Next.js.
So what's your YouTube channel?
So I think it's just my name in English, but I don't think it's a good idea. Let's see if I can. It says Sagi Carmel, I think. Let's see.
And then, on LinkedIn, we can just look you up by
just
your
like
name.
at Sagi Carmel. Just doesn't have any. It just added a bunch of numbers in the end, but it just adds Sagi Carmel. So it's like might contain Hebrew. So if your audience don't know Hebrew, but sometimes I'll try to add stuff in English.
Right. All right. Well, so the last part of our show is always picks, and that's just shout outs about stuff that we like. So I'll go ahead and get us going for the picks. And I always start my picks off with a board game. And so this board game it's a variation on Pandemic. So for the folks that have played Pandemic, if you don't know what Pandemic is, it's a cooperative game where you're trying to eradicate diseases from the globe.
I know it.
And so you all have different roles and you move around and you play cards to find cures and things like that. This one is a little bit more involved, and there's a variation on Pandemic called Fall of Rome. And so instead of diseases, you have armies that are marching toward Rome.
Mm-hmm.
This one is Fate of the Fellowship, and it's based on Lord of the Rings. So, and I'm going to be teaching it in about 3 weeks at a game convention.
Nice.
Anyway, my friend he teaches games at the convention every year. He used to be part owner in a board game store.
Wait, does he make a living from teaching games? Like, is he doing it for free?
No, not anymore. So he was getting paid by the store in his profit share, but the store closed. So now he's just doing it just for fun. So anyway, the way that this works is you have armies from the different bad guys, and you have armies for like elven armies. What was it? It was elves, humans, and anyway, there are like 3 or 4 different colors of good guy armies. And so, you're moving your armies to fight off the other armies, and then you're trying to get Frodo and the ring to Mount Doom. You have to complete I think it was 4 missions, and the 4th one is getting Frodo to Mount Doom and being able to play a number of ring cards in order to destroy the ring. And if you can do that, you win. We played it twice. We lost. So it's not just like this super easy game, but it was fun. There were 4 of us playing. Board Game Geek says it's best with 3. So you play with 2 characters each. And so, somebody's Frodo and Sam and somebody else, and then they might have another one. I think the other character that person was playing was Legolas. I was playing, who was I playing? Eowyn and Merry and Pippin. And so you can do they have different abilities, and you move around the map and try and manage this stuff. You also have havens that you're trying to protect, and if you lose havens, then the hope meter goes down, and if you lose hope before Frodo gets to then you lose. And it's got a tower that you roll the dice through, that looks like Sauron, the Eye of Sauron tower.
Wow.
The different missions are you have to take. What's Saruman's tower? You have to take that. You have to have a certain kind of a battle. I can't remember. I've only played it like twice, but it was very, very fun. And so Board Game Geek weights it at 2.99. So Pandemic, I think, probably is like a 2.1 or 2.2. This is a bit more involved because you're moving the Nazgul around and trying to, you're keeping track of a lot of things. The armies march along different paths on the board. And so unlike Fall of Rome, they don't all go to Rome. The paths go all over the board. And so anyway, it was fun. We really enjoyed playing it. So I'm going to pick Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship. This is a new game. It came out this year. Usually I'm picking games that, are a year or 3 old, but this one's new. So definitely go pick it up. It's one of the more well put together visual games. So it's very fun because all the pieces are well designed, and anyway, so it's cool, very cool. So I'm going to pick that. My wife and I watched a movie last night. I didn't love it, but it was good. I could have predicted every plot point in it.
Movie?
Whatever. But it was called The Christmas Miracle of Jonathan Toomey.
Is it a love story?
No, it's at the beginning of the movie, the main character is a 10-year-old boy. His father goes off to war. I think it's World War I, and he's killed in action. And he has this nativity set that he'd put out every year with his dad, and he loses it. And so Jonathan Toomey is this wood carver. And so anyway, they move to the town where Toomey lives, and meet with him, and anyway. So yeah. So and it takes place at Christmas time. Anyway. And Toomey is, they commission him to carve a replacement nativity set. So anyway, it was all right. I guess it's not a glowing endorsement, but if you're looking for a movie that you probably haven't seen, and yeah, there were like 2 actors in it that you've seen in other stuff. I'm trying to remember names, but I'm not very good at remembering celebrities' names because I just don't care. But there was one in particular. She was like one of the kids that he befriends, and she was in The Host and a handful of other movies as an adult, right? And she's a little kid in this movie. So we ran across it, and it's got to be 20 years old or something, at least. But anyway, we enjoyed it. So my wife really liked it. So if you're looking for that kind of a feel-good Christmas movie, then that's right up your alley. Those ones don't always do it for me, but I'm a good sport. I'll sit through a movie. Trying to think what else.
Are you thinking about a pick? Because I have something that I recommend people just if they haven't already play it, it just Silk Song.
Yeah, go ahead. Do a pick.
Just the Whole Night Silk Song. It's amazing, and if you didn't play it already, you should. It's an amazing game.
Which song is it?
No, Silksong, the game, the video game. It's Hollow Knight Silksong.
Okay.
So
Hollow Knight. Yeah.
Hollow Knight, yeah. This game crashed the entire internet or the stores of Nintendo, Xbox, and just crashed it for being awesome. And it's still amazing. And I recommend you all to play it. And obviously play the first Hollow Knight. Those games are just amazing. Team Cherry are just amazing. Yeah. And I don't know what else.
The graphics for that game, I love them.
Hand drawn, not animated, not pixelated, just drawn. All the passion behind it, just amazing.
Yeah, it's very simple gameplay, but it's a fun game for sure.
Simple, my goodness! All right, simple. This game is so goddamn hard.
It's hard. Oh yeah, I'm just saying.
It's like very nice.
It's how do I explain it? It's somewhere between, and I haven't played a ton of it. My son was really into Hollow Knight. And Silksong. So Silksong just came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Hollow Knight. You move through. You do have some basic attack and things like that. It's almost. I mean, you are fighting through the levels, but it's almost as much a puzzle game. Like, how do I get into the right position to get through the level, right, with whatever abilities I have, as it is an action and fighting game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and there is a lot of lore behind it. Generally, it's a fun game.
I love the visuals on the game, and it's definitely a fun game. Like, I don't want to sell it short, but. Yeah, but I haven't played Silksong yet, so I'll have to check that out.
You would love it.
I really want to get the Switch too. I haven't.
Don't do it. I recommend
Don't do
it for two reasons. One, the fact that Nintendo gets away for overpricing their console is unforgivable. There is no reason to buy the Nintendo 2, just so I wouldn't feed to that market. Secondly, it's the Nintendo 2 doesn't have a lot of graphic improvements. If you already have the Nintendo 1, you should just stick to it. And unless you want a very exclusive game, then I recommend you to stick to the Switch one.
Right. Are there exclusive games to Nintendo or to the Switch too?
Yes, they are, but again, if you're not looking for anything specific, then I recommend you just to stick to the Switch one. I also have a Switch one, but just I'm not that keen on just hopping over and just buying how much was it? $800 for the Switch? That's nuts.
I haven't even looked.
It's nuts.
But yeah, it looks like Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Oh, there's a Metroid, a Kirby, Hyrule Warriors. So yeah, there are games, I guess, that are exclusive to Switch too. But yeah, yes. I haven't even priced it. I was going to look and see how much it was for Christmas, but
now that you'll see the price,
if it's more than a couple $100, I'm probably. Oh yeah, it's $500 here, and that's a little bit. If my kids really, really deeply wanted it, it'd be like, okay, this is all you're getting, right?
For the next 3 years. Oh my goodness.
So.
And again, it's it doesn't have any significant graphic improvements, so just.
Yeah, I guess I haven't looked into that either. I have to say too that so one of the reasons that I was excited to get the Switch when it came out was it was kind of the hybrid, right? It was the console you hooked to your TV, and then you could also just put it in your bag and take it with you. And as far as a handheld system goes, I really liked it. As far as then hooking it up to my TV, I felt like it wasn't the best console.
Yes.
Is that a terrible thing to say?
No,
that's been my take. So, I don't know. I mean, I like the
I'm
Switch,
with you on that. Look, the Nintendo for me, just like it was very not convenient. That for me, the hookup, I don't know how it works with like other people, but you get like this plastic piece.
Yeah, you got the cradle that you slide it into.
3D printed, it's very like not very convenient. Then you need to hook that up with your HDMI, and then in order to make it work, so you need to place the freaking Switch inside the slot.
Right.
Like, it's very annoying. I wasn't excited for handhelds. I would recommend the Steam Deck, which is the better one. That being said, I don't have the Steam Deck. I just had heard the reviews about this, and just like you get access to a bunch of games, and it works pretty well. And if you're traveling a lot, maybe try the ROG Xbox, which is not really an Xbox handheld. It's live, but just look it up. Though the ROG Xbox is more expensive than the Nintendo's one.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the nice thing about because I didn't even know Steam had a Steam Deck, but it looks like you can play basically anything you can get on Steam on the Steam Deck, which is,
and plus some stuff you can get on Play Pass with Xbox for stuff that you can also play on PC.
Right.
It's amazing. Yep. It's like it gives you everything. Now about the quality, my guess it's on par, if not slightly better than the Nintendo Switch.
Probably.
Just for assuming because you're optimized for the Steam, but
yeah. But yeah, my other issue with the Switch is that they do have a docking station for the Steam Deck as well. The other issue that I had was that the little Joy-Cons, like those, we get drift in them, we get all kinds of other issues, and then it's okay, well, the battery's dying on it, so I have to go slide it onto the Switch, and when I slid it on, then it came off of the dock just enough for it to kind of glitch out, and
the suffer is real. I get don't know how many times I got.
But the issue was always with it when you were using it as a console on your TV and not right as a handheld. It was generally better, but anyway.
So I have one of the issues that I have. So normally, if you buy a single Switch, you get like 2 controllers, which are 2 halves, which is essentially one. But if you want to play with a friend, you have to hook it up to this sort of janky plastic thing that you'd slide it over, and then you would hold it horizontally instead of vertically with the other one. You have no idea how many times I've messed it up and I flipped it to the wrong way, and I'm pretty sure that most of the reason why it's drift is because of me, not because of the control, because the amount of time I had to slide this this stupid plastic thing inside the controller. I got the other way. It's dominant.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. But this was cool. Good conversation about Astro. Fun conversation about games and video games.
Thank you for having me.
I think I have it in me somewhere. Eventually, I want to write a video game, but we'll see.
If you need somebody to talk to, I know my fair share of video games. So
yeah, I know a few people who have built video games too. So my 20-year-old keeps saying that he wants to be an indie video game developer. Of course, getting him to sit down and actually do the work to learn how to do it, that's another story. But I get the appeal, and I think it'd be fun. So anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Till next time, folks. Max out.